Before I get started, I just wanted to take a few minutes and say a few things. First of all, I want to let you guys know how absolutely fortunate you really are. I have had the privilege of speaking at B-Sides conferences literally all over the world, from Barcelona to Texas to the Caymans, you name it. Toronto. I think I've done like 23 different B-Sides. And to be honest, RJ, if you haven't met him out there, please take the time to do so. The organizers here, he asked me last night, what is my favorite B-Sides and why? And the truth is, it's this one. And it's not for the reasons that you would think. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the most authentic B-Sides that I have ever been to. This is truly community-driven. Between James, RJ, Ozzy, Diamond, you guys have put together, in my opinion, one of the best conferences for an actual community-driven, cybersecurity event. And I am honored and grateful for the opportunity to come back, but you guys have done an amazing job. So quick round of applause for the organizers and for B-Sides. So having done that, let's have some fun. So thank you guys for coming. The title track for my talk today is called Synthetic Identity. All right, let's see if we can figure out the fancy clicker. Oh, it works. All right. So if you didn't catch me last year, my name is Len Noe, N-O-E. So I am a technical evangelist, a white hat, and a biohacker for CyberArk software. If you're wondering about the biohacker thing, my best advice is to actually look up my talk from B-Sides came in last year. You can check that out. I've spent the better part of my life actually as a black or a gray hat and came to the security side of things kind of in an unnatural way. I basically started having grandkids and decided that, if I don't want to have my grandkids meeting me behind bars, I needed to make some changes. And in doing so, it basically gave me the opportunity to take the skill set that I had acquired and that whole think like an attacker mentality. I don't have to worry about trying to think like an attacker because I am an attacker. I'm also as I said, one of the world's thought leaders in biohumanism or transhumanism. If you're not familiar with what that is, I am actually an augmented human with about 10 different microchips in my hands that I use for offensive security. I'm extremely active on social media. I have all of my contact information up there. Feel free to reach out over LinkedIn, check out my YouTube, my GitHub, and follow me on Twitter for additional security-related stuff. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Identity. Identity seems to be the big word in the industry today. We hear about identity theft, identity monitoring, identity validation, identity security. Everything is tied to identity, and with very good reason. Our identities are the most valuable thing that we possess. It's our likeness, our voice, our behavior patterns. It's our friends, our families, our hobbies, likes and dislikes. It's what makes us us. But is it the physical us? Is it the digital us? And is there even a difference between the two anymore? I think it's a really good idea for us to start with just a simple definition so we can all be on the same page for the purposes of this talk. According to the Oxford Dictionary, identity is the unique set of characteristics that can be used to identify a person as themselves and no one else. And this is the context that we're going to be using for the rest of the talk today. When we look at all the data that we actually just leak during our normal day-to-day life, we can see how quite a bit of this information can actually be weaponized against us. And it's my hope that by the end of this presentation, that we'll see that when we talk about identity, it's all encompassing. And the perceived lines that we've drawn to separate the different facets of ourselves simply don't exist anymore. So this brings us to synthetic identity. So let's look at the bigger scope for just a minute. We have our physical identities, we have our individual digital footprints, we have computer identities and the multiple accounts that encompasses the full scope of who we are. With account sprawl as well as data harvesters basically in every single application, every purchase we do wants our email, wants us to take a survey. The human experience is for sale, and the market's good. Phishing and targeted spear phishing are becoming more and more effective due to the availability of what we used to consider PII that we're now just giving away as part of EULAs. We see targeted advertising based on our search patterns and data analytics. We see doxing and the public disclosure of individuals for nefarious purposes in the news pretty normalized these days. We have AI chatbots that are in the news almost daily now. We've been the commodity for quite some time, and I don't think people realize just how valuable this type of information is. What if we were to see the melding of predictive analytics combined with AI used against all the information that we're leaving behind? This is the synthetic identity that I just mentioned. It's not an individual, but more of a collection of an individual's behaviors, mannerisms, interests, likes, dislikes, post, essentially everything that we do. Depending on the size of the data model and the online activities of an individual, there's a very high probability of analytical success from that type of a data set. Think about all the little nuances we do when we're online, things that nobody else would notice unless they were actually watching us every single minute of every single day. We have the ability to interact with that data in a user-friendly way now. And I'm actually going to be demonstrating that to you before the end of this presentation. So, we live in a digital world. Let's look how every aspect of our lives has basically turned digital. Everything from smart TVs and to the cars we drive. Everything has a username and a password. Every service wants to know more and more about you and your life. Think about the last time you were able to do anything without the need of some tech stack behind the scenes. Practically everything we do wants some information from us as the user. Every business or service wants to know more about us. You're going to go grocery shopping? Get a loyalty card so they can send you targeted coupons. Want to buy a new car? Take the survey. Need a doctor? They want to know every aspect of your life. The requests for your data are everywhere if you actually stop to look. There are even some parts of our national infrastructure that have actually been converted to smart devices, and this is the only way they work now. There is no way to do these particular functions manually anymore. Everything is asking us our physical identities to attach to more and more digital services. Every time we add a new app or a mobile device, another piece of software is asking for permissions to reach deeper and deeper into our private lives and our individual beings. So, we've all seen to look at our life very compartmentalized. For example, we see our work life very different than our home or personal life. But the truth is there's so much overlap that we don't even see the forest for the trees anymore. Anybody that has ever been to one of my talks before has probably heard me say the days of keeping the bad guys out and keeping them on the DMZ just doesn't work anymore. Not that we don't want the security, but we've moved into a different type of technology model. This is a world where corporate assets are not stored on corporate properties anymore. This is a world where we are seeing more and more business use on our personal devices. BYOD is essentially commonplace. We have more remote workers now post-pandemic than ever. Yeah, we do everything we can from endpoint security, antivirus, EDR, XDR, BitLocker. Hell, I could talk for another 3 hours up here of different security controls out there. But the truth is, as soon as these devices leave our environments, we just got to hope that we've done our jobs correctly, as well as hoping that our end users remain vigilant in their efforts to keep the company safe. We sit back and watch our laptops and our mobile devices walk out into the world that, as we as security professionals know, is a digital war zone. What's the first thing that's likely to happen when we take an asset out of a company? Anybody? What are we going to do with it? Bingo. These assets are probably either going to be plugged in or logged into a home network. And let's be honest, on our home networks, do we have anywhere near the same number of controls that we have in a corporate environment? How many of us are doing patch management on our routers, our NAS, home NAS devices? And God help us if you've got a smart house and you've got IoT. You know, do you have a system for updates for your home technology? Do you have a life cycle management for your internal devices? For the sake of time, we're not going to go down the IoT and smart road, but think about it. Maybe we got to share your home internet. Here's one that should be relatively easily recognizable. Everybody here know Minecraft? Oh, yeah. Maybe you're like me, you got kids, you've got grandkids. Some people may not be aware that Minecraft is actually used to teach computer science to elementary and middle school children to try and get them to understand code. But at the same time, depending on which version of Minecraft you're running, that is extremely susceptible to log4j. What if somebody in your household is using the BitTorrent network? Currently the estimation is, what is it? I think it's 2 out of 3 binaries on the torrent network currently contains some form of payload, be it a rat, a Trojan, or a virus. So our attack surface is literally everywhere, and we haven't even brought up machine identities yet, and how that can actually accelerate account sprawl and overlap. How many self-service portals are using the exact same questions? I mean, if I'm using my mother's maiden name for my Netflix, is it that same mother's maiden name that I would be using on my Office 365 self-service recovery? Do I have 2 mother's maiden names? And is this something that publicly we could get? If we look at some of the digital trends and the numbers, this data was taken from July of 2022. The total world population around that time was hovering right around 8 billion globally. Now let's use that as the comparison point. The total number of online users at that same time was around 5.3 billion. Social media users at the same time, 4.7 billion. E-commerce, 4 billion users. I love numbers. Numbers don't lie. Then we can look at the AI. ChatGPT actually set a world record for 1 million users in its first week. 35% of all companies right now are investing some type of capabilities or investment into technology related around AI. And 44% of the private sector companies plan to invest in AI this year alone. One moment, please. I've said it before. I'm from Texas. I can handle heat, but the humidity here is causing me to melt like a snowman. Apologies. So these are the technologies that are coming at us fast and furious. So I told you that today's talk was about synthetic identity. So how do we create a synthetic identity? We're going to start by talking a little bit about O.S.I.N.T. If you've never heard this term before, O.S.I.N.T. stands for Open Source Information Technology. And as defined by the United States public law, this is intelligence gathered from publicly available sources that is used to address specific intelligence needs. The U.S. Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Defense also cite this definition. According to NATO, considering that's a little bit broader scope, O.S.I.N.T. includes information from publicly available sources as well as other unclassified information that is not widely distributed. So basically, this is public information. There's no hacking involved. That's one of the key points I want to make about O.S.I.N.T. This is not hacking to get information. This is just leveraging information that is already there that people may not know where to look to find. And this is the heading that the rest of this talk is actually going to be under. We're going to start off by taking a look at some of the bigger commercial operations that are available for a fee. A couple of examples of these would be Checker, Ben Verified, First Advantage. Maybe you've used some of these services in the past. Then we have the open source tools. And for the purposes of today's discussion, we're actually going to be going over 3 different O.S.I.N.T. tools: IKY, which is I Know You, Spiderfoot, and Blackbird. Each one of these tools will add a little bit more information to our synthetic identity. So let's go ahead and show you guys what this actually looks like in real life. So before we get started into the actual meat and potatoes of the video, take a look at this. For the sake of argument and for the purposes of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you guys you're going to find out some things about me today that if you guys were in the same position, you may not want up on this screen. But the truth is, everything that I'm going to show you today, any single one of you would be able to go out and get the same information. But this is from a pay service called Ben Verified. This is on the header page of every single report that you run. And if you look at what it says, and I know it might be hard to read from there, so I'm going to read it for you. Please remember, you are restricted from using this information for employment screening, hiring of household workers, tenant screening for housing, educational qualifications, credit or insurance purposes, or business transactions initiated by an individual. So if you're not allowed to use this information for any of those purposes, what is the legitimate use case? There isn't one. It's somebody just selling our data for the sake of selling it. So let me show you what it actually looks like. Hello. Thank you. So this has been verified. And I'm actually not going to obfuscate any of this because you can go to the same app, run the same report, and find the exact same thing. So there I am, Leonard Keith Noe, 48 years old, Austin, Texas. So let's actually go ahead and run this and show you the kind of information that we are making monetizable. I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1974. That is my home address. That is my phone number. That is one of my email addresses. So social media. Some of these are my social media accounts. Look at what the headers are there on the left. Phone numbers, email addresses, address history, relatives, ancestry names, associates, neighbors, jobs and education. I can even run criminal background checks in here. Possible owned assets, that's my car. That's a truck that I sold 4 years ago. That Jeep Wrangler I got rid of almost 15 years ago. Sold that Explorer Sport Track a long time ago. We're starting to see a pattern here. I can look up DEA license, weapons permits, professional licenses. I'm just running through here. How about associates? These are people that are known to be affiliated with me. Some of these are some of my ex-in-laws. You getting the point yet? How about relatives? That's my wife. That's my daughter. This is my ex-wife's husband. That's my ex-wife. That's my ex-wife's current husband. But you also notice there are dates when these are available. So that's my mom, that's my dad, that's my brother, that's my sister-in-law. Pretty scary. And it's only going to get worse. There's my employment history, CyberArk, ADP, Westnet Technologies. Education. There's some of the A-Cloud Guru. There's the college I went to, New Horizons. That's a lot of information. There's all the places that it knows that I've lived in the past. If we're looking at, and get this one, all the way down here, you see that one on Cowan Road? That was my first apartment when I was 19 years old. Every single address that I've ever lived at, with the exception of when I lived in Puerto Rico, is on that list. So you have family members, relatives, previous addresses. And that was the commercial stuff. What about, went back, one too far. What about the open source tools that I was telling you about? So let's run those. I'm gonna fire off all 3 tools, and we're gonna show you IKY, we're gonna show you Spiderfoot, and we're gonna show you Blackbird. IKY is an email scanner, Blackbird is a username scanner, and Spiderfoot is basically the ultimate Swiss Army knife for searching. And we're going to fire up all three. So this is IKY. We're going to fire off Spiderfoot. And all I'm going to put in here into IKY is my business email, len.noe@cyberark.com. We're going to let that run. Anybody that knows me knows that I go by a hacker handle of hacker213. So we're going to use Blackbird, and we're going to search almost 600 websites for the existence of an account named hacker213. And we're going to go into Spiderfoot, and we're going to do a full web scan for the individual name of Len Noe. And then we're going to see what type of stuff we can come back with. Spiderfoot will actually let you do email addresses, domains, subdomains, IP addresses, users, reverse phone lookups, pretty much anything that you could ever imagine. So as these do take a few seconds to run, keep in mind when we see these, I do not own every account that is hacker213. I own a lot of them, but not all of them. So let's go back to IKY. And remember, this started with just my business email account. Found my industry, found my company. If you look over on the left here, you'll see an email reputational details. Down on the lower right, the leak graph from any leak maps, social media accounts, social user scan. Then we get down, it found an Eventbrite page from one of my previous talks where somebody signed up. And now we're going to get down into the Yandex and the actual web searches. Let's see what we find. Because I'm a public speaker and I've done a lot of interviews, podcasts, there's a lot of information out there on the web about me. So it's going to actually give you raw data as well as analyze search results. And through all of this information, we're still going. Possible other usernames, hashtags I've been associated. Let's go into profile. Keep in mind, this is my work email address. Wow, it found the places I've lived, other possible emails, found my actual phone number. And this is just off of my business account. Found a bunch of the social media tools that we use at CyberArk. Every one of these that are green, there is an account named hacker213. Again, I don't own all of them, but if you want to try and find the attack landscape and actually try and get to me, you just found a bunch of information. I bring this up. This here is a LinkedIn profile that I found about 2 years ago. That's not me. And what I find really, really troubling about this is look how many followers there are. And that is not me. That is a counterfeit. I knew about this one. Remember how we kicked off that Spiderfoot scan and said scan the entire internet for anything that's related to Len Noe? This is what I found when I was preparing for this talk. If we go under social media presence, I actually came down here and went, what the hell is this? This is another counterfeit account that I had no idea was even out there. So it becomes very, very easy to manipulate. So now that we've seen a little bit of what I can do from just a commercial and people finder, as well as some OpenGNU tools, but we haven't even talked about the companies that we have to divulge PII to in order to even access their services. I'm going to talk about the big tech companies that we have integrated into the fabric of our lives in order from worst to best. When it comes to data collection, what do you think is the largest, what big tech company is the one that's collecting the most on us? Anybody, throw it out. Facebook, wrong. Google! Google tops the list and collects 39 different types of data from its users daily across all of its products and services. Stores everything from domains, including a lot of private data like browser history, location history, user activity on third-party apps, your health data from Google Health. It also stores every single email from your Gmail account. For fun, if you're a Google Android user, you want to know how deeply Google is ingrained into your life? Go look at your Google timeline. You take a picture, it'll geolocate it and put it on a nice little chart that will tell you the time, location, metadata. You can't get away from it. Who do you think the next one worst is? Somebody, come on, throw it out. Who's the next worst data harvester? Twitter. Twitter collects 24 different types of information from its customers. And the thing is, if you actually look at Twitter's privacy policy, it says right in their privacy policy, everything you post on the platform is available to third parties through programming interfaces. This allows businesses to comb through Twitter and analyze your data to learn as much about you as possible so that they can do targeted advertising directly to you. Next. Yeah. Yeah, Amazon, sorry. Amazon comes next. 23 different types of data. And honestly, Amazon, in my opinion, is one of the ones that scares me the most. Amazon can collect your name, addresses, searches, recordings when you're interacting with your Alexa, all of your orders, content you watch on Prime, contacts if you've enabled the email feature, as well as cookies. According to Amazon, it's for personalization. And that's just big tech speak for using your data to improve your online experience. But you may not realize it can reveal an absolute ton about you. For example, if you use just Amazon's retail store or via the website or an app, Amazon will collect data such as the purchase dates, payment and delivery information. And according to Rwanda Felding, who is the director of data protection and consultancy, Miss IG Geek, from that information alone, Amazon can work out where you work, where you live, how you spend your leisure time, and who your friends and family are, just from ordering on Amazon. And at the same time, Prime Video and Fire TV information about you, they can figure out potentially your politics, religion, culture, and economical status, just based off of what you're viewing on Amazon. Facebook comes in fourth with 14 different types of data. Believe it or not, Apple is the most privacy conscious of all of the big tech. They only are nice enough to collect 12 different types of data. Account information, device footprinting, payment info, transaction information, fraud prevention data, usage data, location, health, and anything shared directly with Apple under your Apple account. These are the ones that we have to basically give up a lot of PII in order to use their services. But we haven't even talked about the wonderful things that we'll sign up for, things like Classmates or Ancestry. And if you're not familiar with Classmates, because it's an older site that doesn't get a lot of notoriety anymore, this is essentially a social media site that allows you to stay in contact with people you went to elementary school with, junior high school, and college. If you haven't figured out yet where we're going with this talk, we've kind of talked about a lot of things that might be self-service recovery question answers, aren't we? So if we take a look at the actual data science, it shouldn't come as a surprise that hacking and data science, they both have a lot in common despite being on opposite sides of the legality. We have everything from utilizing AI for targeted spear phishing. We see AI being utilized to create new types of malware and ransomware that we've never seen before. And I believe the reason that it's happening is because we now have access to these types of services that we never had before. AI was typically reserved for universities and governments. Now, when we have OpenAI, we have things like Midjourney, we have Google AI. ChatGPT is being integrated into the Bing search bar. We're putting this stuff everywhere. CyberArk Labs even was able to use ChatGPT to create polymorphic malware. And if AI isn't such a scary thing, why is it that the government is looking to actually create regulations around it? We talk about real world threats. This was actually a public service announcement that came out in 2022 stating that bad actors were actually trying to get remote IT jobs using stolen PII. These are actually two identity markets off the darknet. If you look, you can get an American passport for as little as $2,000. I wanted to show you this one. Order process. After buying an ID or a passport, send us a message with your age and gender so we can find a matching data set. Where do you think they're getting the data sets? It's all of our stolen identities. We're seeing AI use in the wild. We see police and governments using AI for predictive models for crowd control in different scenarios. We have new companies like Syntellex. These, if you look at their website, they specialize in intelligence and law enforcement. We can even now get a master's degree in criminal justice data analytics. So this is now going to be a very big part of our future. So let me ask you guys the questions. After seeing all the kind of things that I just was able to pull, do you think I could figure out what street you grew up on? What about the elementary school you went to? Your first car? How about your relative's birthday? Maybe your mother's maiden name? Even your first job? Realistically, anyone with LinkedIn, we've turned our LinkedIn profiles into a living resume. So let me set the stage for you guys here. I took all of the information that I was able to get from Ben Verified, as well as all of my O.S.I.N.T searches. I shoved them all into ChatGPT. And then I said, let's see if I can interact with this. So here we go. Tell me about Len Noe. Well, Len is a technical evangelist and white hat for CyberArk. Well, gee, this kind of looks more or less just like one of my bios that I would put out for one of my talks. Not really impressed. I mean, it worded it nicer than me. Tell me more about Len Noe. Okay, let's see what it comes up with this time. Len's a technical evangelist, pretty much the same stuff that we had in the first paragraph. Not really. Oh, wait. One unique, he's a biohacker or a transhumanist. He's also appeared on various podcasts. Okay, we're starting to get some information out here. Tell me about Len's family. This one shocked the hell out of me. My parents, Leonard, Keith, and Donna Faye, brothers Tracy and Trevor, his granddaughters. His grandkids call him Robo-Papa, which is true. It took my relatives from one scan, took a quote that I made in a podcast, and was able to correlate the fact that my grandkids call me Robo-Papa. Here, I said, tell me about what Len did last year. So it went out and found all of the different things that I did in terms of presentations during 2022. If I had a larger data set, imagine what we could do with this same type of technology. So in closing, we're down to the point where we have to ask, AI and chatbots, identity, business identity, home identity, they're all the same. There's no lines separating them anymore. So is this new technology that we're all putting our faith into friend or foe? Because I just made it look like it could be weaponized against us. Honestly, I guess it depends on who's asking the questions and what controls they're currently in place to keep those answers within a proper set of parameters. I know there's been a ton of controversy around this new technology, and everybody's got an opinion on it. Everything from targeting individual and threats of ruining personal users' careers to not providing correct answers during live demonstrations for chatbots. There's been conversations about AI, chatbot ethics, morality, bias, as well as any number of additional topics. And these are all great conversations that I can see happening in the relatively near future. But the truth is, we need to realize that technology is still technically in its infancy, and we need to proceed with caution because we don't know what we don't know. So we leave digital artifacts everywhere. And we need to realize the truth of the matter. These are all different types of data that we're just leaving behind. And if we don't, the problem is once it hits the web, it's there forever. So what do? we start looking at ourselves and applying that same zero trust methodology that we've all gotten so used to in terms of our digital. Yeah, I know, I know. I got 5 minutes, I know. That's okay. I am the tsunami. So, as I was saying, we are the product, and we are our personal information that we're using on things like Netflix. You saw the questions. Is the street you grew up on in Netflix the same street you grew up on in O365? So the call to action is actually twofold. Just like back in the late 80s, early 90s, when we had to learn not to click on links in emails, we need some behavioral modification. When it comes to physical identity security, access your home infrastructures, update your patch management, realize that what goes on in your corporate life is the same type of things that would be going on in your personal life. Look at what's being asked. Does this entity need this information? If you're going and to say an electronic shop to buy a new computer, do they need to know where you live? Do they need to know, what your spending patterns are? You're buying a computer. If you're at a grocery store, do they need to know about who your friends are? Everybody wants more. Assess the situation and realize what you're giving them. Do they need it? Slow down when it comes to social media. Realize that a lot of these stupid tests that'll give you your rock star name or whatnot are actually personality quizzes, and they're meant to actually get information to map you out as a person. They're trying to decrypt us as individuals. Look at the apps that you've loaded on your mobile device. I mean, how many people, aside from me, actually look at the permissions that are being asked before you install an app? Why would a notepad need access to your contacts, your camera, and your microphone? Think about it. As far as our digital call to action, adaptive multi-factor authentication. Here I am, the tsunami. But look at adaptive multi-factor. You can look at some of my other talks. There is not a single biometric authentication that hasn't been bypassed, compromised, or spoofed. So all we really have is the ability to lock it down with multi-factor adaptively. And for the love of God, I personally think two-factor authentication should be considered a profane word and we should never speak it again. MFA does not mean two, it means multiple. Two is the minimum. Username, password, OTP, footprinted device. Different protocols if you're on LAN or if you're off LAN. Is it coming from a region that I know is safe? If it's coming in from China at 3:30 in the morning, it's probably not me. Zero trust. Like I said, everybody understands zero trust from an architectural model. When it comes to digital solutions, we need to apply those same concepts of trust and verify to our individual identities. Because the idea that something that happens in my personal life not following over into my work life, not a guarantee anymore, especially when we have so much work being done on mobile devices. If you're on a mobile device and I compromise your mobile device and you're on a VPN, guess what? I can probably ride your VPN right into your enterprise. Verify your users, verify your devices. Single sign-on. We've seen how I can pull almost every single recovery question. If we know that these particular answers are available through open source searches, don't use those answers. Come up with something else. If it's your mother's maiden name, maybe spell it backwards. Do something that me as the attacker or the guy looking you up isn't going to be able to find and just stick right in. Think about it. Password managers. Also, with single sign-on, you will reduce the number of self-service recovery portals that you will need. Limit the number of times those particular passwords or answers to questions could be utilized. IDS, next generation firewalls, privileged access management, network taps, and actually security orchestration. With that, At the end of the day, what does identity security mean? We have one definition that everybody seems to understand when it comes to a digital perspective. We need to make sure that those same principles follow over into our normal physical lives, because there is no line anymore. So with that, I would like to open it up for a couple of quick Q&A, and I thank you guys very much for attending my session. Okay, I hate to do this, but I already promised she's got the first question. As soon as she shuts off the tsunami alert. Oh, actually, go ahead.
We'll let the mic, whoever wants to ask the actual first question, raise your hand, and then our mic runner will bring you the microphone.
Anybody with a question, raise your hand.
We just need to make sure that we speak into the mics because of the live stream on this. So kind of a funny first question. So
sure.
I watched your presentation on being a transhuman.
Yes.
So as a person whose fiance and now husband was subject to intense what's the word? Searching by the TSA in the New Orleans airport.
Oh, yes.
For a Wrigley's chewing gum wrapper in his pocket. I wondered how you get through the TSA or other.
That is the one question I get more than any other. I will demonstrate how I walk through TSA. Ready? I want you to see this because this is very complicated. This is how I walk through TSA. They've never found me. Number one, there's not enough metal in my implants to actually trigger a magnetometer. Number two, they're actually inside my body. So if I'm within the United States, I have the HIPAA laws that are protecting me, and they're considered medical. So you realize when in airports, the magnetometers, women can walk through with earrings and a necklace on, they are not set that sensitive. Honestly, most of the stuff that's in my implants is biomembranes and silicone. The only metal is typically copper on the wire antennas and the titanium and the iron in the magnet in my pinky. So they've never caught me, they've never asked, and I've never been questioned. Any other questions?
A question about those people who are harvesting your data. Where do you see Microsoft in that list?
Believe it or not, Microsoft came in lower than Apple. And the reason that Apple and Microsoft came in so low on the data collection was because they are not as dependent on advertisements for revenue. They have actual product. So typically Apple, Microsoft are pretty much the same. They keep enough data in order to maintain the account, but they don't do a lot of overreach like your social media because they're actually gaining their revenue through advertising streams.
Thank you very much. I love your presentation, eye-opening. But aren't we already all trapped?
Aren't we already what?
Aren't we all already trapped? Yeah, I mean, within the system.
Yes,
in terms of what you shared in the latter part of your presentation,
yeah,
what to do.
It's already out there, and that's why I was saying if we know that these particular answers to these questions are out there, these are still the standard questions for a lot of self-service recovery portals. So if now that you know I can figure out your mother's maiden name or the street that you grew up on, this is where we as enlightened security professionals go, okay, if they can, let's say my mother's maiden name was Jones. If that's the recovery question, maybe I spelled Jones backwards. Maybe I put something in front of it like Mother Jones. This is where now that you understand that this type of information can be actually harvested, modify those answers because a lot of times they're not going to let you create an account without those recovery questions. So don't make the answer something that I can find through public information. Modify it. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons why under our mitigation strategies, this is where password managers that you can actually rotate the passwords on a daily basis. Single sign-on, lower the total number of actual recovery questions and portals that you need to utilize. Look at identity security products, adaptive multi-factor, possibly PKI style certificates. Get away from what we're using, and if you're forced to use it with the knowledge that these types of answers can be actually harvested and modify the answers so that you're the only one that actually knows what the answers are. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, one more in the front. All right. Yes.
Okay, so I did. Part of our ministry's work has also been to pass legislation in the Cayman Islands that is going to create an identification register and the possibility for a digital ID system that is using the Estonia's X-Road system. So I wondered if you would comment a little bit on the relationship of government and ID and how it just seems increasingly like all the information you've given is our own ID and this nexus between us and the digital world. No system is going to be perfect.
No,
but
there isn't. And as much as I hate this, I got to give some props to one of my companions at CyberArk. He actually gave me the greatest and worst explanation of a layered security concept that I've ever heard. If every one of our security controls is one piece of Swiss cheese, there's not a single security control out there that doesn't have some hole in it. So if I put one slice of cheese up here, I can get through. Well, I put another slice of cheese up here, the holes are there, but they may not be in the same places. And if you put enough controls in there, there's no straight pass through anymore. And that's honestly, unfortunately, that's the answer, is there is no one silver bullet, and you need to look at things from an actual layered security approach so that you have that complete coverage. Identity security, privileged access management, network taps with SIM integration, data analytics against your SIMs, security orchestrations based on if there's something detected in the SIM, maybe it detects a logon of a privileged account domain administrator that during an irregular hour from an unknown place, automatically through security orchestration, take that particular host, move it into a different non-interactive OU and prep it for digital forensics and incident response. We're never going to be in front of the 8 ball. I was asked a question, and I'll close with this. Is a threat really a threat if it hasn't made it into the wild yet? And I think the answer is it's individuals' determination of their own risk as to where you go with this. But as long as you have enough controls, security is a state of mind. It is not a state of being. For you to actually say, I am safe, I feel bad for you. If you say, I have put enough controls and security measures in front of my systems that if somebody gets through, my dwell time will be minimal. I'm more about detection and mitigation. Those are the people that I think are going to do well, because every single day there's new 0 days found. And as much as we're trying to secure things, there are other individuals out there that are trying to tear it apart. And they have a much greater desire than we do, just based on the financial gain. Any other questions? Thank you guys so very much. I know it was early. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be available out in the back if you're one of those types like I used to be, where you're like, I don't want to ask a question in front of a bunch of people. Hit me up. I'm a really approachable guy. And thank you guys very much for taking the time to come and listen to my big mouth this morning. Enjoy the rest of the conference.